So today we're heading back from Shimoda on the Izu Peninsula, partly because I decided that Shimoda was a bit far away from Tokyo, and secondly because the Akiya Bank people there weren't terribly helpful, and when we got there we couldn't actually go and see much in the way of Akiya. And a couple that we did have a look at or looked into via the real estate agents weren't very good anyway. So we headed back in our hire car back to Atami, and one of the issues that you have with rental vehicles in Japan is in the main cities it's not such a big problem, like Tokyo, Osaka and different places. But in the smaller towns, sometimes they don't want to actually rent a car to a foreigner. So this place that we are returning our car to was one of the few places that actually would rent to a foreigner in Atami. Now, the other thing about the rental companies is that when I tried to book a rental car from Nagano, I did it through Airbnb. And when I got to the point where it said, "What's your nationality?" I said Australian, and they rejected it. I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, wow, what have Australians done? Anyway, I did actually manage to book a car through Budget Rental Car in Nagano instead. And that's in a later video. And Atami is a great place. Very nice, probably worthwhile to actually look at possible Akiya there. They do turn up some good ones at pretty cheap prices. And it's not that far from Tokyo either. But partly I didn't like the beach, and I was kind of set my heart a bit more on Kamakura, which we'll look at today. But now we have gotten to Atami, and in Atami there's this beautiful house called Kiunkaku. I can never remember, but I'll put it up. And you'll see it's a fantastic place that I think is really worth having a look at if you get to Atami. It was built by a wealthy businessman way back early 1900s. He built it for his mother to live in, and a beautiful place, a Japanese style. But then he sold it to another wealthy businessman sometime later, who expanded it and put in a mix, maybe, I guess, of Western, Chinese and Japanese element. And the place is beautiful. Then that guy sold it to another wealthy businessman who turned it into a ryokan, a hotel. And the place is quite a huge area, and it's got the most beautiful garden. So if you get to Atami, honestly, go have a look at this place. It is gorgeous. And these European elements and Japanese elements, they blend in really nicely. So go have a look. Our time on the Izu Peninsula had finished, and it was time to go back to Yokohama and then down to Kamakura. We were living in Fujisawa, so from there you catch the Enoden line, which is a great little railway service that takes you down to Kamakura, and part of the trip involves the ocean, and it comes through a lot of quaint little railway stations and lots of greenery because Kamakura has a lot of bush around it. And you can go surfing there, you can swim, you can do a lot of sports. So you get to Kamakura station, and then generally people walk down to the beach, but there are plenty of other things to see, and there's Mount Fuji in the background. It's a well-known scene from one of the famous woodblock prints. And here we are at my favourite temple, the Kokuji, the bamboo temple. You can see it in the background. Kamakura has lots of forests, lots of walking tracks, quite beautiful, and so much to see. You know, you could spend forever there. It's got great history, great scenes. And we visited temples while we were there, and of which there are plenty. This one is Engakuji, which is quite famous. Well, a lot of them are very famous anyway. About the temples is that they're very quiet, peaceful places that get you away from all the hubbub and the noise of Japan. and they are all various sects of Buddhism which came to Japan a long time ago and over time developed into a bunch of different sects. I often go to temples when I need a bit of peace and quiet. And the Daibutsu, or giant Buddha, is also in Kamakura, as well as the walking street. Lots of shops, lots of people. And this is one of our favourite restaurants. And so it's arrived, the best curry in the world, or best soup in the world actually. One of the great things about Kamakura is that if you want peace and quiet, it's very easy to find it there because of all the temples. Not only the temples, but the forests that surround the place. This is Suragaoka Hachimangu Shrine, which is a really large shrine complex in Kamakura, not far from the station. You can spend an enjoyable half day roaming around there. The thing about Kamakura is that Kamakura is not that far from Tokyo, probably an hour, I suppose. And we were originally going to live in Kamakura, and we had this great place lined up, which was a rebuilt tea house. It was all lined up. It was only going to cost $600 a month. But then when we got there, it was so hot and we could not find an air conditioner to rent, like a portable air conditioner. And we realized that if we stayed there, we were going to die. It was just so hot and humid. And so we moved into another place that we were only going to stay in Fujisawa for a month. But because of my visa application, we really were told that we probably shouldn't move because then we'd have to restart the application. So in the end, we didn't end up staying at the tea house, which was a pity because it was in Kamakura and I wanted to use it as a base to look around. The problem with Kamakura is that it's popular. And even though there are Akiya there, they're not overly visible, and people have Akiya, but they're not really in a situation where they want to sell them at this stage. And I tracked down this report by the local council about the number of Akiya in Kamakura. And it turned out there really aren't that many that were appropriate. And so you've got a small pool of Akiya, most of them not going on the market. And the prices in Kamakura are just kind of crazy anyway, because the place is so popular. And it's popular because it has beaches and temples and forests, and it's beautiful. It's just a really nice place, and it's got so much history because Kamakura was the seat of government from the 1100s till about the 1300s, I think it was. And it was the center of the shogunate. So it has a lot going for it. And the prices, they're cheaper than the West, but they're still expensive for someone hunting for an Akiya. And if your budget is $30,000 to $50,000, then like mine, then you can pretty much forget it. As you can see here, this house is an Akiya, or looks like an Akiya, and it's about 100 years old. So you think it'd be fairly cheap, but it's been renovated inside, which is an improvement. But it's also in Kamakura, and this is the price. Along with that, when you go to the Akiya Bank site, you find that Kamakura doesn't have an Akiya Bank. And when you go to Akiya Mart and type in Kamakura, you'll find there's a lot of places. But when you type in the amount that you're willing to pay, in this case $100,000, and you apply the filter, basically you get nothing, which means that there aren't any places there under $100,000. Then when you bump up the price to $150,000, do the same thing, you get a couple. But they're still over $100,000. Then you go up a bit higher and you look at 200,000 and you get a couple more. So if you're looking for a cheap Akiya, then Kamakura is probably not the right place to go. And these ones at the higher prices, most of them aren't that much chop. But still, they're cheaper than Western houses. So if you've got that money, it might be worthwhile. When we were looking at accommodation in Kamakura on a later trip that we made, we found that it's quite expensive to get accommodation there. But someone recommended to us that we go to the town of Ofuna, which is only about a 7-minute train ride from Kamakura and much, much, much cheaper. So if you're planning on doing anything in Kamakura and you want to stay close by and you don't want to pay the outrageous prices in Kamakura, then you could stay at Ofuna. It's quite an interesting place. And it also has the Ofuna Kannon, which is a giant statue of the goddess of mercy. We were looking for this temple and we came across this bridge and there it is, Kannonji, the Buddha of Compassion. So we're going to go across there and have a look here in Ofuna. Seems we might have a couple of options. I'm not a fan of all the steps. And it goes up and up and up. But there's another option here. And there's my lovely wife, leading the pack. Ofuna Kannon Temple is a Buddhist temple in Kamakura, and it has that giant statue I mentioned, which stands at 25 metres or 82 feet tall and weighs nearly 2,000 tonnes. The temple is only 300 metres from Ofuna train station, and the construction began in 1929 by the Soto School of Zen, and that was interrupted by the war, and then they continued construction in 1954, and it was finally completed in 1960. And it was all done by hand. There were no concrete pump trucks or anything like that. So it's a pretty impressive site with an impressive statue. So if you'd like a nice, quiet half day out to enjoy some peace and quiet in the temple surroundings, then the Ofuna Kannon is a great way to go. That flame came from an original flame that was found at the site of the bombings of Hiroshima. Ofuna itself is quite interesting with its restaurants and its kind of vibrant little place. Not as pretty perhaps as Kamakura, but I think it's worth a stay if you're looking at visiting Kamakura each day. So Kamakura in the end did not work out, and I was still interested in places near the snow. So our next trip took us up to Yusawa, which I've covered in a previous video, but we continued on from Yusawa and we went up to Nagano and Lake Hojiri. And from there, we visited a lot of the sites around that area and looked at Akiya up there. And that's going to probably be our next video. So until then, keep watching. Please subscribe, share if you like, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm here at Kiunkaku Temple, which is a famous Zen temple in Kamakura in Japan. And the reason I'm attracted to Zen temples is because years ago I became ordained as a Zen Buddhist monk, and it was a reaction to the fact of all the dramas I was having in Thailand, rescuing children, and all the corruption from police and political figures and all the rest of it. And I realized that I couldn't change them, I could only change myself. It's an uphill battle, and my wife will tell you that I am the worst monk she has ever met. But that's another story.